Hello and good afternoon to you. It is now 12:31 p.m. and I've got some stories for you. I've got my soup cup, as you can see here, and I actually don't even use this for soup. I mean, it's a pretty small cup for soup, because if I was to make soup, it has to be a bowl like this big, and I'll eat it all in one setting. I've got decaf coffee in this, and milk, and I added cinnamon. So it's kind of a strange combination, but it works. It tastes pretty good though. I get tired of only drinking water. It got pretty boring, but yeah, I'm gonna talk about some stories and go from there. But I was gonna talk about the times I visited Naples, Florida when I was younger, and I would always go there. It tended to be more often that I visited there during the summer, because I was off of school, and because I was off of school, I went to visit there, and to kind of get out a little bit and do some different things, because as I've talked about in other videos, when I was younger, our family didn't have a lot of money, and so whenever we wanted to go somewhere, I would just go, because I got tired of being in the house all the time. Like for me, when I was younger, going to Walmart felt like going to the mall, when you're really poor. And I remember going there and just playing the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2s and all that when they were coming out, and couldn't afford them, but I would just go to Walmart and play on those. Let me take another sip of this. Okay, so I would usually visit Naples, Florida, which is where my grandparents lived when I was younger, and we often visited there during the summer when I was off of school. And the drive there was about 3.5, 4 hours, I think. I know it was at least 3 hours, but it wasn't any longer than 4 hours, and the drive felt like so long. Then when you're a kid, when you have to wait on something, it feels like an eternity. Like when you have a game that you have to play that's being downloaded for your computer, and your parents tell you it'll only be 30 minutes. That 30 minutes, it feels like days. And the car ride there felt like it was a long time, even though it wasn't at all. And I would just sit there and think about things. I would try to look at the clouds and imagine that there's things in them. I would try to count all the semis that I would see. And I did this one time actually several times I did this. I would just count how many semis there were on my way there and then on my way back. And half the time I would get tired and I would lose count. But there was a couple times I would count all of them. And I don't know why I was doing this. I don't even know. But I think I was like maybe 6 years old. And sometimes my grandma would be with us. Like she would come, or grandparents they would come visit, and they would drive back with us. And so they told me to just count the semis to keep me preoccupied, and so I did. And then I would try to count how many certain cars of a certain color that I seen. And where I grew up at and I lived was, I kind of lived all over the place, and we moved pretty often. I lived in Centerville, Bushnell, Groveland, what are some other places? I have a hard time trying to remember all of them. Was born in Orlando. I lived in Opals Island. I stayed in Naples several times for a while. I we kind of just moved all over the place, but I did stay in Naples a couple of times with my grandparents for a little while when parents were having issues, and like the car ride there felt like a long time, and just count cars. I would notice the change in the landscape, because at the time, most of the time that I can remember when I was younger, I spent, I would say, at least half of my life, maybe more, probably more than half, maybe 3/4 of my life when I lived in Florida, I spent in Center Hill and Bushnell. And Center Hill is like out in the middle of nowhere. There's not really anything around. My closest neighbor was like a couple of miles away. And Bushnell was a bigger area than Center Hill, which was, I think it was right beside Center Hill. So there's like Center Hill and then Bushnell. And then I can't remember. I think it was like Lake Pan is like off in another direction from that. And so when I moved from Center Hill to Bushnell, I actually lived in two places in Center Hill. We lived in Center Hill, and then we moved. I can't remember if we lived in that house and then moved like 3 miles down the road on what was called Tuscaloosa Road, just down from where I lived in Center Hill. And trying to remember the name of the road I lived on, but it was the road that was off of Tuscaloosa Road in Center Hill, Florida. And we lived in this little red house, and it was really old. That house had to have been from the 1800s, and it was really run down. I lived there for a couple years, and then we moved to Tuscaloosa Road. And this place was like a big, I think it was a double wide trailer. Maybe it was a single wide. I mean, it was a decent size for a trailer, so I think it was a double wide. And so that was Center Hill, and then Bushnell. That was later on when I was older. And so yeah, those are two places I lived most of the time. But other than that, all the other times I lived anywhere, we were moving constantly. We would stay in a place, they couldn't afford rent. We would move, stay in a place for a couple weeks, move, stay in a place for a month, maybe move, and then a couple weeks, move again, then maybe a month or two, and then move. So I couldn't really get used to school because I was constantly moving. And so the friends I would make, I would lose them quickly. I had a hard time making friends, but I would lose them very quickly. So every time I moved, anybody I got to know, I just lost contact with. And this was way before the age of, really internet or anything. And being that we were really poor, we didn't really have a lot of the stuff that other people had. We had like some old E-machine computer. I mean, that was when I lived in Bushnell. We had that. I think, yeah. We didn't have it when we lived in Center Hill. But both these places I lived for the majority of my life. And I would go to vacation to Naples, Florida when I lived here. And I know the times that I visited Naples, Florida, where my grandparents lived, I did that more often, I think, when I lived in Center Hill when I was younger. And my parents lived there. They retired there because the weather was nicer and it was easier on them because they're older. And I kind of went off there a little bit. I was talking about the car ride, but there's just a lot of stuff to talk about. So the car ride there, I remember why I talked about this. I was talking about the landscape. Now, then I was going to go into talking about the differences between like Bushnell, Center Hill, and Naples and all that. But so on the car ride there, the landscape would change from like where I lived in Bushnell, Center Hill, to Naples. Like Center Hill was like more in the middle of nowhere, really. There was like, I was just surrounded by fields and pastures, and it was mostly like, I wouldn't say it was kind of like agriculture, not really. It was mostly just farmland of cows, and some little ponds here and there all over the place. And then Bushnell, when I moved from Center Hill to Bushnell, that felt like a big city compared to Center Hill because my closest neighbor was a couple miles away, and then Bushnell, our neighbor, was like a couple 100 yards away. And so the landscape would go from, mostly like oak trees and some pine trees and all that, to mostly palm trees as we got towards Naples. And I remembered I would always be really happy and excited to go visit because when I was there, we got to go to the beach, and I also got to ride on golf carts. I got to ride a bike around. I got to just walk to places, and there was just a lot more to do there. And the area in Naples, Florida, is a bit more expensive to live there. Rent and everything costed more because you're obviously beside the beach. And so I was looking forward to visiting because I got to see my grandparents and enjoy a little bit better weather, because when I lived out in the middle of nowhere, it smelled like cows and a field. So when I got to Naples, the air smelled better, it was fresher, even though it was closer to the city area. But man, like I would go on vacation there and visit, and then when I was there for like a week or two, I would get used to the air in Naples, and then when I moved back to Center Hill, I would smell like the smell of the cows in the fields, and it didn't smell that good. And so the car ride there, the whole landscape it was a big change, even though it was just Florida. You'd think, oh, it's Florida. There's palm trees everywhere. Oh, I mean, there was a couple in Bushnell and Center Hill, but like, I think in Center Hill and like that whole area, there was maybe like 100 palm trees. They were kind of spread out really far, and they were kind of out in the middle of nowhere as well. And then Bushnell was like that too, and most of the trees had moss on them. And there's a lot of oak trees, and in Naples it was just mostly beaches, palm trees, and there was a couple other ones, but there's a lot of those what were they called? Palmetto trees, I think. They look like palm trees, but they're like shorter and smaller. Those were all over the place down there. And the car ride there, I remember during this time, like the first memories I have of like visiting there all the time was when I was like 8 or 9. And this was during the time that I was playing StarCraft a lot. And I would just bring a StarCraft game with me to play when I would go to visit my grandparents. And I would have like the user manual, talks about all the units, and I would just read all of that and try to think of ideas of how to play the game or any strategies. And so I would try to think of that to preoccupy me. And yeah, the car ride felt like it was so long, even though it was not that long of a car ride. I mean, it was 3 to 4 hours, but when you're that young, that feels like forever. I mean, even now, I don't like driving that far. Like anything more than like 15 minutes, I don't like to drive any longer than that. But I pretty much just do not like driving more than like an hour comfortably. And then 4 hours, I was like, yeah. I think the longest I've ever drove, other than the time I had to drive in driving school when I was like 19 or something, was like maybe 2 hours or 4 hours myself, and that was just horrendous. I mean, I get tired of being zoned out looking at the road. But anyways, I would bring StarCraft with me and I'd play that when I was there. And then There was also, when I was a little bit older, I think when I was like maybe between the ages of like 12 and I think maybe 11, when I was like, might have been 10, so pretty much 10 through like 15, when I would visit there, they had this PlayStation 1, and I would play The Legend of Dragoon on it. There was 4 CDs with the game, and it was a really long game, and I would play that a lot of the times. And I remember when I got to the end of the game, the final boss I was struggling with, because I just like rushed through everything in the game. Like I tried to do as much as I could, but my character level was really low. It was like 20 levels or 25 levels below what you're supposed to be in the game at that point. And so like I had to constantly use shields and heal myself. Like I would attack once and then just heal myself and use shields for like 10 turns in a row. It was kind of like a turn-based combat game, and you had to push certain buttons and combos and all that when you attack the enemy. And so I played that game a lot, and I remember a couple of times when I was playing, my grandpa would be out working on some stuff, and this was like a big like area for retired people. Yeah, I think you had to be 55 and over to live there. And he would go around and like he picked up trash, and he would work on some things and work on some of the houses and do a little bit of like yard work and all that. And there were times he would ask me to help him, and I would be so focused on the game. Like he would come in and be like, "Hey, can you come help me with doing some yard work or picking up some trash?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'll be out in about 10 minutes. He's like, "Okay." He'd go back working on his stuff. Like 6 hours would go by. And he'd come in, he's like, "Where have you been the whole time?" I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" He's like, "I asked you to come help me, and you said you'd be out in 10 minutes. And I was like, "Oh, I forgot." Because, like, I didn't have a PlayStation 1 at home. I don't think I even had anything. I had a Nintendo 64 until I was, like, I think 14. I believe, yeah. And then when I was 15, I got a Nintendo GameCube. And so when I went to visit Naples, to visit my grandparents when I was that age, I didn't really play the game as much. I also played, I think it was a game called Driver. And at the time, the PlayStation 1 seemed like amazing graphics and everything. But now when I look back on it, it's like, wow, why was those graphics so good to me? They don't really seem that amazing or anything. But when we look back on things now, like 20 years from now, we're going to think, wow, we thought those were good graphics in games. And now everything's way better. What was I thinking? But that's just what we had at the time. But I played Legend of Dragoon a lot. And I remember playing that Driver game. And he would come in and be like, where have you been the whole time? And then I remember, like, when I was working with my grandpa, we would go around and pick up some trash. And, like, he would drive the golf cart, and I would just, like, run behind it and throwing like, the trash in the back of it. Then we would take it somewhere, and then we'd go a couple more houses. And I would just run behind the golf cart. It gave me some exercise, and got to move around. And he was surprised that I was able to run on like this hot asphalt in the middle of summer barefoot. And there would be like stones and stuff sometimes as well, because this retired like area for people 55 and over was beside the ocean. It was actually like right there beside the ocean and by the beaches. And there was like a little tiny pier there where people had their boats. People that retired had their boats there. And he was like, how are you running on that asphalt barefoot, and there's stones and rocks all over. And I was like, I don't know, it didn't seem to bother me any. And a lot of the little like white stones and stuff that was laying around came from like the beach or the pier beside it, because they had a bunch of stone, like little tiny stones. And same with people's driveways. There's like white stones all over for they would lay out for, or gravel for their driveways. And so I would always step on those, and it didn't seem to bother me. And I had tough feet from running around when I was younger, because I mean, like, I had shoes, but they were just cheap. They're like these $5 cheap shoes you would get at the dollar store or like Walmart. And I would run around wearing those, and they would just fall apart quickly and easily. And so I just mostly ran around barefoot. And so it toughened up my feet to where I could just run on asphalt, run on the really hot sand on the beach. I get splinters, didn't bother me. I could run out in the fields where all the farmland was and all that, and things would stab into my foot, and it didn't really bother me any. I'd always get like what they called like stickers and briars and thorns and stuff in my feet. And I would just go home and like pull a couple of them out, and I'd be fine. And I'd go run around and do all that. But yeah, I remember running behind it and just throwing the trash on there. And then we had to do some stuff with working on this house. And this was later on. I think I was a little bit older. I might have been like maybe 13 or 14 at this point. Yeah, somewhere around there, between 13 and 15. And he would ask me to go help him. I had to go to this it's like a combination between a house and like a trailer. I don't even know what you would call it, but it was kind of like a mobile home park, but there were some houses there. And it was more of an expensive area because it was Naples, and so the places were pretty nice. And we had to work in this one house. I had to help him with putting up some boards, fixing some windows, and laying stuff on the floor. And I didn't know anything about this stuff, and so I would just be there to like hand him materials or hand him a screwdriver or hand him a hammer to work on something. And it was the middle of summer, and it was really hot out. Those of you that have been to Florida or know what it's like when it's really humid. And so we were in this house working on things, and it was very humid, and there was no air circulating, and he just put the windows in, and so it was super hot in there. I was sweating like crazy. And then every once in a while we would go outside about every half hour, take a break for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then go back in and work on some stuff. But yeah, it was pretty hot out. And I remember so many times that I would get sunburns, and it wasn't that I got sunburns because I was out in the sun for like an hour. This was because I'd be out in the sun from like sun up to sundown, like say from 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. So for 9 hours, 8 to 9 hours, I'd be out in the sun. And I was very tan. And now living in Ohio, it's not that much sun. My skin is much paler than what it used to be when I lived in Florida. And so, yeah, the weather was hot. It got very humid, and I would help him work on all these little projects around the place. And then, so there was the PlayStation 1 I played a lot, The Legend of Dragoon, Driver, and there was this other game that I played. It was some type of like wrestling game that this kid that it was somebody that they knew. I can't remember exactly how I got to know him, but his name was Jeremy, and I think he was maybe a year. I'm trying to remember if he was older than me or younger than me. I can't really remember, but he was close to my age, and he was taller than me. He was quite a bit heavier than me, and I think I'm trying to think. I think right now he's like maybe 6'3" or something. He's pretty tall, but we had to go to Walmart one time because we wanted to get a new video game to play, and so we put the money together, our money, and we went to walk to Walmart. And Walmart was quite a walk from where we were in Naples. It was several miles, but it's a lot of walking when there's a lot of crosswalks you have to go through. There's traffic, and so we walked there, and we seen this wrestling video game that we wanted to get and play, and we put our money together. We bought it, and then we went home, started playing it, and we played that a whole bunch. And when we were playing the game together, he would get so mad because I would just mash the same button over and over again, and he couldn't beat me in the game, and he got so frustrated with it. And we had this other, like some kind of Street Fighter game we played. I don't remember the name of it because it was all for the PlayStation 1. And I remember we were playing that. Sorry, my nose was itchy, but we were playing that all the time. And it was like we would play that game a whole bunch when it was raining out really bad and storming. And then as soon as it quit raining, we would go outside and run around, ride bikes, ride in golf carts. And that was some funny stories when... So my grandparents didn't want me riding my bike really fast because they said I was riding it too fast and I was going to get hurt. And I was pedaling so fast on that bike, I felt like I had to have been going like 40 miles an hour. And I would just do laps around and around the whole park. And then I would go down this, I believe it was called Walker Lake Road or Walker Built Road in Naples, Florida. And there was this one stretch of road. It was like maybe half a mile long. And I would just ride. I would like see how fast I could go down that. I would just pedal as fast as I could. And so like to pedal faster, I would stand up in the bike and then put my weight on the pedals and just pedal as fast as I could. And there were times where I would race Jeremy. He would be on the bike and I would run. And he was like, "What the heck? How are you keeping up with me running?" And so he always wanted to race me like that. And then the golf carts, he always got in trouble for it because we would go to ride in the golf cart and he would go really fast and go on the side of the ditch. I don't know why he was trying to flip it. I don't know. But we would ride on that. He would go too fast on it. He got in trouble with it a couple times. And then the bikes were they were older bikes. They didn't have a lot of, they weren't like these, 10-speed bikes and all this with all the different gears. They had like maybe 4 gears and that was it. Like high and medium and low. And I think a couple of them didn't have any. It was just one speed. And a lot of the retired people had these bikes, and they rode those around there. And I would just do so many laps on that bike, man. And again, I would be outside, 8 hours riding on the bike, all over the place, and there was these little rabbits all over. And when I was riding the golf cart with my grandpa, he would tell me to get out and try and catch them. And I would actually try it. I would try to run after them, and they're just darting all over the place in different directions, and trying to get away. And it like I would get really close to them, and they would just like really, they'd freak out and run away. And there was like this one shed or building I remember when I was younger, and there was all these tools inside of it. And I was kind of fascinated with it because I didn't know what was going on. I was like, what is all this? And so we would go in there. He would get tools to work on things, and this was right beside the whole ocean. It was right on this like little pier or dock area where all the retired people had their boats. And I would go in there, get some tools. We'd work on things. I remember him riding the golf cart like right beside where the dock was. And I asked him, like, how have you not drove in yet? And he's like, well, I've just been driving a long time. And we'd be like really close, like a foot away. And we kind of had to, because there was these like trees that was beside this, and the roots come up out of the ground, so you couldn't drive over that. And so we had to be far over from those. And so then we'll just ride the golf cart around. And there was this one street that was the very end of this park. So there was like 1, 2, 3, there was like maybe 4 or 5 streets. And the one we lived on, I believe, was the first one. So it was like the first, second, third, and fourth. And then my cousin, at one time, I believe she lived like 3 streets away. And then my aunt, she lived like 2 or 3 streets down from that as well. So then the very last street, there was like, I think it was the 5th or 6th one. That was like, I can't remember if this is like where all the super rich people lived or not. But I remember it was paved completely different. The ground was completely smooth. And when it was raining out, I would go to ride my bike, and it was impossible to turn, like, because it was so smooth. The tires would just spin and slide, and there were so many times where I would fall off the bike, or the wheels just slide out from underneath the bike, and I would fall off of it. And so I had this crazy idea, I don't know why, to go as fast as I can, and then lean on the bike on the side and try to slide, like you're drifting in a car or something. And I would do that a whole bunch. And I would always do it after it got done raining. And sometimes it didn't rain, but mostly after it finished raining. Because during the rain, there was just too much water, and it was just impossible. And so I would do it when it quit raining. I would pedal really fast, and I would go down to the street, and I would just turn the bike really sharp and just drift and slide. And I got pretty good at doing it. And a couple of times my grandma told me, you can't be doing that, riding your bike so fast. And so I would always go down to the very last street and nobody would see me. And I don't think I ever really rode my bike anywhere past that. My brother, like, sometimes would come with us. But he was, at the time, he was always getting in trouble with people, so he, I'd like go to like juvie and all this, and like boot camp and all these things. I think it was boot camp. I know it was like juvie, but he was always in trouble with stuff. And so I think half the time, I remember, even from the age of like when I was 12 to 15, I remember he like wasn't even around most of the time. He was either getting in trouble, or he was in like juvie. And then the rest of the time, we didn't get along. But there were still some good memories. And I remember me and him, we would like ride our bikes around places too. And there's a couple times we walked to Walmart just for the heck of it. And sometimes we rode the bikes there. But a lot of times we would just walk. And then we would go to the beach sometimes. And my one cousin, she would always take me to the beach. My cousin Maria. And then, so we would always go to the beach. And it was really nice compared to like the whole Bushnell and Center Hill area. it was nice to get out. It was nice to get a change because of all the bad things that was happening at home. And it was a bit of a relief from that. And so we would go there, visit, and I always wanted to go to the beach. I like to go out and collect seashells. Sometimes I'd make little sand castles when I was younger, and but mostly I like to go out there. And sometimes it would be almost nobody on the beach. Like I would look as far as I can see, there'd be like nobody. But I did go on vacation there in 2016. There's way more people now. But when I was younger, from like 10 to 15, there weren't nearly as many people on the beach. And I would go there. I would just lay down a towel. I would put my sunscreen and everything on. And then, I think like half the time I forgot to even put sunscreen on because I was more focused on, just having fun. My mind was concentrated on other things. So I would lay down a towel. And then I would lay down on the beach, just listen to the wind, listen to the waves, and just relax. It was nice. And I'd hear the birds, and pretty calming, relaxing. And I would just be laying in the sun, nice and warm, and sometimes there'd be a cool breeze. And so that would keep it from being so hot. And then I'll just lay there, think about things. And then we would go for walks down the beach. And I would talk to my cousins. And this would have to be for a whole nother story, but it is a similar topic. Was my cousin Marie when I would go to visit them. And I think it was in Naples, Florida. Unless it was, my nose is itchy. I think it might have been Naples, Florida. I have to find out, but I would go and visit them sometime, which I'll have that for an entirely different story. But back to like the area in Naples where I was visiting my grandparents. So we would always go to the beach, visit them, and it was nice. It was calm, relaxing. Got to do a lot of things. There's more things to do because in Center Hill and Bushnell, there wasn't much of anything. And Bushnell, there's more things to do, but Center Hill was out in the middle of nowhere. Like Center Hill, like the closest store was like this gas station, which was like 5 miles away. We actually had to walk there a couple times. But going to Naples was a lot more fun. So much more to do. I got to get my mind to just escape all the problems that was happening. And my grandparents had this bird. I think it's actually still alive. It's a sun conure, and its name's Tinker. And that bird was so loud. I remember a couple of times it bit me when I was younger. My grandpa got really mad at it. And in the morning when we would get up, as soon as they take they put like covers over the cage so that the bird could sleep better at night so it wouldn't get so much light. But in the morning, as soon as you would take the cover off that bird, it would just start squawking and it would get super loud. And then later on they get a second bird, but I remember going with them when they went to get it. And I don't remember how old I was. I might have been like 10 or something like that. Maybe 11, I don't know. But yeah, they've had that bird for quite a while. It's like almost 20 years old now, maybe. And man, that bird was loud. It always sat on my grandpa and just followed him everywhere, wouldn't leave him. And when I would visit my grandparents, my grandpa would always make a really, really good breakfast. And he had all these different recipes for making breakfast. And I don't know what it is, but in Florida there seems to be Waffle Houses all over the place. And we would eat these all the time when I was a kid. And I must have used a whole stick of butter when I ate waffles. I don't eat any of that stuff now. I completely quit eating like anything that is not healthy since I was like 12, or I tried to since I was 12. And between 12 and 15, I had a hard time because it was either eat somewhat unhealthy or don't eat at all. So I chose to eat. But then after 15, I really improved my health after that. But we would always go to Waffle Houses. Those things were just all over the place, and it seemed like there was another one. Wasn't it Pancake House? No, maybe I'm thinking of something different. But I know there's just Waffle Houses all over the place, and we would go to those and sit there and talk and eat waffles. But I don't think they had all-you-can-eat waffles. That's a different restaurant. Probably hear a train coming by. But yeah, a lot of stuff happened there. There's so much stuff I could probably talk for hours and hours. But it's just a matter of remembering all of it. I've actually have to write some of it down. So, what are some other things about Naples when I visited? So, we also had times where I would go there and visit, and because Florida gets a lot of hurricanes and all that, there were so many times where like a hurricane would come and I'd be on vacation there, and because we were right by the ocean, a lot of times the water would rise just above where the docks were, and it would come into the park area, and sometimes, like when I was there or when I would visit, I would help my grandparents, and I'd help my grandpa work around the area to clean up stuff, and we had to pick up a bunch of limbs, tree branches, and just stuff that had flown all over the place and help clean it up, and we would get it all cleaned up. And then next summer, more hurricanes. I mean, Florida's a nice place, but the hurricanes can be the one thing that can be the determining factor as if you want to live there or not. And so yeah, a lot of storms, lightning. Like the lightning down there compared to where I live now, like I would look at the sky and it looked like it was the apocalypse down there. And the lightning up here is not much of anything. Not that many lightning strikes. I do believe Florida has the most lightning strikes in the United States. I'm pretty sure that's correct, maybe. Yeah, but yeah, a lot of hurricanes hit all the time. And when I was on vacation there, it happened, but I felt safer in a way because I was actually near a hospital. I was near other people that could like help me, because when I lived in Center Hills in the middle of nowhere, and so when a hurricane would come, I was like, oh great, what am I gonna do? And it was a lot different than where I live now, where there's like a blizzard or something, or it snows a little bit and everybody's terrified and everybody goes out and buys $1,000 of groceries and they're snowed in for 2 hours. It makes no sense to me. Whereas down there, you would get a hurricane, you couldn't go out anywhere for maybe 2 weeks or so, depending on the damage that was done. And that's if you even had a house left. So, very different as far as the weather. And it was mostly sunny, like when I was younger, when I lived there. It seemed like every day for like 10 or 15 minutes, it would rain. And this was like in the afternoon or the evening. It was usually between like 3 and 6. It would always rain for like 10 or 15 minutes. Then just quit and be sunny. And it doesn't seem to do that as much. Like when I went there to visit in 2016, it didn't really rain that much. I know they were going through a drought there for like many years. And but it was nice to have like 10 or 15 minutes of rain, and then for it to get sunny out again, because it made it to where it wasn't so hot. But the problem was it made it super humid, because the rain would fall, and like the ground and everything was really hot, and so it was like an oven. Then it was like a humid oven. Like, imagine you take an oven and you put a big pan in there. Actually, better idea would be like, imagine a microwave. You take a microwave and you put like a big bowl of water in it, and then you microwave it on high for like 30 minutes, and then it's super humid in there but hot, and that's what it was like. So it would rain, and then like the ground was still hot, it would rain, and then the sun would be out. Like, a lot of times, even when it rained, the sun would be out, and so then it would get hot again, and then made it super humid, and then it would get like really humid a lot of the nights. But when I lived there, like, I could actually see the stars. And now when I moved to Ohio, I don't even hardly see any stars at all, which is kind of strange. Like, even when I lived in Naples, Florida, where there was a lot of city and everything, I could still see the stars better than I do now in Ohio. And where I live in Ohio is it's a small town of like 10,000 people, but it's spread out over a larger area. So like a normal standard town, I imagine like a regular town of like 5,000 people. That's kind of what the places that I live at. And I don't really see that many stars here, hardly. Like, I can see them, but they're not that clear. It's mostly just like a slight overcast or something. I can't really see them. But even when I lived in Naples, Florida, and other bigger city areas, I could see the stars down there. So I don't know. I don't know why that is. Maybe if anybody else out there knows, you could tell me. But I would so we'd go to the beach. Like actually, I'll start from the very beginning of the morning. So we'd get up. We would eat breakfast. My grandpa usually got up before everybody else, and we would eat breakfast, and then after that, talk for a little bit, and then I would go out, ride my bike around. And even before that, I would go with my grandpa, and I can't remember what day of the week it was. We would go out and pick up trash. We'd do that sometimes, but I would get up, eat breakfast, talk a little bit, go ride my bike around for hours, go jog around the place, go for a walk. I'd walk down to the dock, look at stuff, and there was always like these little, like tiny little crabs and stuff that was on the dock, and I would go out there, and I'd watch all the big birds that were flying around. Sometimes I'd see alligators or crocodiles like going down the river, and there was always big frogs and toads, and the grasshoppers that were like this big. They were massive, and here in Ohio they're like little tiny things. And like when I moved up here, there's like almost no fireflies. There's like hardly any birds and stuff in comparison. There's not that many. Like down there's way more animals and everything. Up here it's like cold, some corn, and some couple people here and there. But I would always go out to the dock beside in the park area, and I would go down there. I would look at all the birds flying around and just sit there and think about stuff. And I didn't even want to go home. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to deal with all the stress and my parents arguing and everything. And so I would just sit there on a dock and think about stuff and thinking about my life. And I was like, what am I going to do when I get back? I guess I'll just play StarCraft and Diablo more and SimCity. And I just did that to keep myself preoccupied. And I did bring StarCraft with me sometimes when I visited Naples and my grandparents to play the game. But I would just sit in the dock, think about my life, and think about what I wanted to do, where I think things are going to go from there. And it was relaxing, but it like in a way, it feels like such a long time ago, and then at the same time, it feels like it wasn't that long ago at all. And I'll just sit there, think about my life, and just enjoy the moment, enjoy the weather, enjoy the sunshine. And I mean, it was nice weather in Bushnell and Center Hill, obviously, but not as nice as Naples. And I'll just sit there and think about stuff. And I was like, well, I wish my life could be like this forever, or permanently. I didn't want that moment to end when I went on vacation there. I didn't want to have to go back home and deal with the arguing and all the mental and physical abuse that I had to deal with. And yeah, I mean, it was tough. And eventually, I finally had to go home. And the car ride back home seemed so short, but the car ride there felt like so long, because I was anticipating all the things that I was going to be able to do, and all the different activities, the beach, going for walks, riding the bikes, a golf cart. I got to eat better food. We went out to places to eat. And the car ride back, it seems so short compared to the car ride there. And after I went there a couple of times, I realized that, and I would just sit there in the dock. And I would go there pretty much any time of the day, really, and just go out there by myself and sit there for an hour or two, or a couple hours, and just think about stuff. And sometimes I'd go out there at night too, and the stars would be out, and I think about stuff. And hear all the frogs croaking and all the animals and everything. It wasn't a swamp area, obviously, because it was the beach, but I think you know what I mean. It was kind of the swamp sounds of the alligators and frogs and all that. And so I'd be sitting there on the dock, looking at the stars, thinking about life. There'd be fireflies, and it felt nice, and there'd be a little bit of a cool breeze at nighttime, and it was pretty nice. And then I would go back in. I remember the last day when I was getting ready for us to come back, when I had to go back home, I would spend pretty much the entire day just outside that day, just thinking about stuff. And I would go to the dock, just think about stuff. I'd walk around the place. I would walk down towards Walmart, go there, look at some stuff, just walk around and really think. But I spent the last day just thinking about stuff. And I had to grow up pretty fast. Most of my childhood was really stressful. So a lot of things that people got to do as a kid, I didn't really get to do. And so because of that, I had to mentally mature faster and kind of skip a lot of the things in my life that I could have done or would have done. And so the last day, I just would sit in the dock, think about things, and then finally had to come back home. And the ride back, 3 or 4 hours, it felt like 15 minutes. And it's okay, we're home. I'm like, great. I'm going to deal with all this again. And that was stressful. And I remember always telling my parents that I wanted to go to Naples more often. And one time I told them that I wanted to stay there the whole summer. I think one summer, if I'm remembering this correctly, that I think I actually did stay there for most of the summer. Might have been most of all the summer, I think. That might have been when I was 12, 13. It was before I was 14. I think I stayed there most of the summer when I visited. Man, that was nice. And it went by so quick too. And then when I come back home, the first day or two felt like forever for it to be the next day. I think that's just because I wasn't having as much fun. I wasn't as happy. I was more stressed. And so, Yeah, I mean, I had my Nintendo 64 to play. I was always playing Turok, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. And, I mean, there was things to do when I lived in Bushnell Center Hill. It's just life was, psychologically and physically more stressful. And, it was just like a paradise. Like, if you think of, like, your normal daily life, like, say if you have just a completely average life, you don't have that much stress. Everything's good. You get along with everybody in your family. You don't have a whole lot of problems. And then imagine that, and then going on vacation somewhere in Florida. When you compare the two, it's like, wow, that's really fun. I get to do things. There's nice weather. It's sunny out and all that. If you compare, like, the life I had when I was extremely stressed, being abused a lot and everything, and then going to that, it was like two completely just opposite things. And yeah, it's nice. I enjoyed going there, and I didn't even want to come back. I was like, man, I have to come back home now. But when I did get back home, I would just do my usual, play StarCraft 2 a bunch, play some Diablo a little bit. Played a whole bunch of Diablo too. And played, well, this is like super classic RuneScape time. But I played that quite a bit too. And then give me something to do. And then, yeah. I did ride my bike a lot when I lived in Bushnell Center Hill. But it was a long bike ride to get anywhere. Miles and miles. And that's one thing I liked about Naples. I didn't really have to go that far to get anywhere. But everything was really expensive, and but it was nice. I mean, I'm a kid. Like even though I was really young, I still was thinking about and considering the cost of stuff. Like when I bought that game with my friend when we went to Walmart. I don't remember how much it was. I think it was like $40 or something like that. But it seemed like so much money to us. I mean, when you only get like, a couple of dollars here and there, like every month or two, like $40, that felt like my entire life savings. And then I'd actually put most of the money towards the game. And then I think that game, I ended up just leaving there. And I think I ended up just giving him the game and letting him have it. And so when I would go down there to visit, me and him would just play the game together. And then when I got back home when I was older, when I was like 14. No, let me think. Yeah, when I was like 14, that wasn't when I had my own like games that I played, because I had a I believe it was it was not a PlayStation 2. It was a PlayStation 1 and a Nintendo GameCube, which I played a bunch. And so then eventually I did have my own gaming systems as I got older, but all the good ones when I was younger, up until when I was like 14, all the good gaming systems and games my grandparents had down there. And and I know they actually used, a lot of times they would use a PlayStation as like to put movies in and play movies, if I remember that right. I know you can do it on PlayStation 2 or like Xbox, but yeah, that was 14, 15 years ago already. And so a lot of time has gone by since then, and looking back on it, there's so much that happened that I tend to forget about that even happened until I start talking about it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make these, to talk about things and tell some stories about my life, because there's way more details about this. It's just a matter of me trying to remember all of it so that I can talk about it and then remember more things that I can write down to talk about my life. So I see it as a way for me to understand myself better, and at the same time to help others if possible. And so that's part of the goal of this. But yeah, it was nice visiting Naples, Florida, and visiting my grandparents and kind of escaping a lot of the things that was going on in life that was difficult. But the last time I visited that area was 2016, and that was a pretty good vacation. And that was the last time I'd been down there, and that's 4 years ago already. Yeah, 4 years already. And but yeah, good times. And trying to think if there's anything else I can just remember off the top of my head about when I visited there. So I talked about my bike. We talked about when I visited Walmart and all that, when I would go for walks, the dock, the weather. I talked about the hurricanes. I talked about the one friend I had there. I talked about, I remember, me and him, I almost forgot this, me and him, I don't know why, but he always wanted to arm wrestle me. And I would always beat him, even though he was way bigger than me. And I think his dad, he would always arm wrestle his dad. And then he wanted me to arm wrestle his dad, and his dad was like, no, I'm not arm wrestling. And I don't know. Me and him, sometimes we would wrestle each other. And I think this kid had to have been like 100 pounds more than me. And he was like half a foot taller than me. But yeah, there's that. And let's see what else I can remember and think of. I mean, there's little things here and there, but it's not really enough to really tell you a story about anything at the moment, until I remember more of it later on. I'll probably remember it like 2 in the morning when I'm trying to sleep. It's like, oh, I remember now. Probably should start just saying into my phone or writing down my ideas I have at night. But yeah, that's some of the stories of when I was younger, visiting Naples, Florida to see my grandparents and enjoying the weather and summer vacation time. But yeah, I'll think of more stories, anything else I can tell you, and I'll talk about it in future videos. But let me know below what you think. If there's anything that you have to tell me about your vacations and stories when you're growing up, and give this video a like, comment, let me know what you think. Let me know any stories that have happened to you, or if you have any questions about my story, or anything you'd like me to go into more deeper detail about when I was growing up, I'll let you know. And share this video with your friends. And I'm going to go work on some things and think about some other stories I can tell you. But until then, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and let me know what you think of my story. But the weather is actually not too bad right now. It's actually clear skies here, which is surprising, and it's like in the 50s. I mean, for me, the 50s feels cold, and I like anything at least 70 or above. Like, I'm comfortable if it's like 80 and up. I don't know why. But yeah, it's kind of nice weather out. I did try to open my window earlier, but it still felt too cold to me. But I've got my windows open, getting some light and some nicer weather. So I figured, since nicer weather, open my windows and talk about some stories about things happened when I was younger. But anyways, until then, thank you for watching. And wherever you are, have a good day, have a good night, and I will see you in the next video. See you later.